Hello and welcome to the SIG update. I'm QX, and with me today we have Joe Armeanio from the EF. How you doing, Joe?
Doing pretty well. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope everybody's having a good holiday.
So the other day I wrote Joe and I said, hey, Joe, since CW is enjoying life out on a cruise ship somewhere out in New Zealand, I think it is, how about we combine these two and we do a little bit of a dev update with some kind of community action where we really get to know some of the devs and also ask a few questions. And Joe said no. So I bugged him the rest of the day every 5 minutes. And he finally said, will you just shut up? And yeah, sure, we'll do it.
Weak man, he broke me.
So I think there's a couple questions I want to start out with, Joe, just in a general thing that has been in the community chat. It seemed to get a little rowdy the other day with this kind of talk, which is fantastic. It's great for people to be talking about this. Sure. First thing is mining fees, and essentially who's in control of mining fees, what that TX fee goes to, who it pays out to, and basically what it takes to actually change that mining fee. So if you could start off just by telling us what the TX fee does.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning, right? So in Ergo and in most proof of work, you have a protocol-based security subsidy that's known as like the emission. In Ergo, how that works is that was minted to a smart contract called the emission contract before the first block was mined. And what that allows anybody to do is to be able to go and actually verify that the amount of ergs that is supposed to exists in that box. And one reason why that matters is because we have actually seen major projects essentially get caught with their pants down in terms of the actual amount of tokens in existence, right? And in Ergo's minting policy, you have the ability to mint, one specific ID once. So you can look at Ergo and see, okay, all of these ergs have been existed since before Genesis, right? And that's what we've called verifiable proof of no pre-mine. That, these are where the erg started from, and you can track and trace everyone, with the exception of the mixer. That kind of adds a layer of complexity, but you can see, basically the ergs from Genesis.
So Joe, those ergs are essentially all the ergs in a smart contract that are ever going to be paid out to all the miners. It's all there. It's all done. It's sitting there waiting for miners.
Like if you were to say, okay, there's going to be 21 million Bitcoin, right? It's emitted from the protocol itself. And in erg, it was minted to a smart contract. You still have logic. Both of them are basically code-based emission. The benefit of having it from a proof of no pre-mine box is you prevent what's called inflation bugs. It's a very old story that's kind of buried in Bitcoin history, but Bitcoin had an inflation bug at one point where they actually had to roll back things because suddenly, they started getting too large of a emission per box, and it was problematic. We've seen other proof of work coins that have that protocol-based emission run into that same bug or issue where suddenly, it starts spitting out extra rewards that kind of screws with the emission curve that they were planning to have. Using functional programming and having it in that verifiable box is cleaner, and it prevents that. So we did have an initial emission. Miners voted and they reorganized that a little bit. It's important to note that Ergo is capped, where all of the ergs in existence have existed since before Genesis. So we can't fiddle with the numbers, right? We can't say, oh, we're going to suddenly add erg on top of our emission. They already exist, and you can't create new tokens with that specific ID. So at this point, we're at, I believe, 45 ergs per block. So whenever a block is hit, you get a payout from the, let's say, initial emissions contract, now to a re-emissions contract. And there's a slight split where some of that goes to the block and some of that is saved for future emissions. And that's part of what EIP 27 did to extend the payout period. So you can kind of look at that as like a rough savings bank for miners, I guess.
So after a certain block height, the second contract will start being pulled from?
Yep. And you will kind of have a tail curve of 3 erg for quite a few years. Now, inside of the block, you have transaction fees or miner fees that can accumulate, and that's a secondary form of, let's say, economic revenue for miners. And that's not always cut and dry, because sometimes you have what's called race conditions, right? Let's say QX drops a new NFT, and there's 100 people that are all racing to get this limited item or limited trade. Sometimes you can have price, fluctuations where there's competitiveness in terms of profitability, and you have the ability to pay miners more. And so sometimes in, let's say those type of conditions, the fee is adjustable on the wallet side. As an example, in Nautilus, you have a little slider bar where you can increase your miner payout. And, a life hack is, if you ever are in serious, let's say, race conditions, you can always run a full node, because you can custom input that higher than you can with the Nautilus slider bar and front run everybody that's running Gold Light Wallet. But
so in short there, and in simple terms, if you're saying 10 of us are going for the same NFT, and whoever hits the wallet first with a payment is going to get that NFT, I can essentially entice miners to pick up my wallet, send my transaction first, because I'm tagging on an extra 10 erg onto the mining fee with my custom node that I'm directly delivering it to the mempool from, kind of thing.
Yeah, in proof of work, miners own the block, right? And that's kind of a generally accepted thing, that because they have this scarce space potentially in the block, and they have all of these potential candidates that end up in the mempool, it creates its own little economy to where they can selectively put what is going to be most profitable for them and their business into that block. So if you have 10 people that are racing for the same thing, generally the miner or mining pool is going to say, okay, well, what is the most profitable for us to fill in this limited space, and they'll choose that. Now, it is true you have some network parameter costs, right? And that is designed to be flexible on Ergo, which in my opinion, is actually one of the most brilliant things about the proof of work protocol itself. But we haven't really seen that fully realized yet.
And what's the flexibility there?
So you have multiple parameters that have the ability to adjust blocks, right? So one example would be the block size. If you've been in crypto for a while, there was a big, let's say, civil war in Bitcoin in terms of block size. And, you ended up with kind of the Bitcoin Cash, and then I guess Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, which has monster blocks. But that's always been a question, because there's a couple things that can potentially impact, right? Number one, if you make a block bigger, you naturally have more room inside the block to fit transactions. And so that is one way to potentially scale a network in terms of the throughput, because you can include more transactions each block. But then you also have this idea of scarcity, right? If you make a block too large to where everybody can always onboard, it can potentially interfere with the scarcity element, which is important for the profitability of miners. So
you're saying that if everybody can fit in the block, then people can barely pay a TX fee or anything like that.
Exactly. And then transaction fees might drop to a point where it's not a sustainable security incentive for the network, which is bad, right? We need to pay miners to secure a proof of work chain. So there's kind of been that fight between, the big blockers that are like, hey, we can scale, and the small blockers that are more looking at the economic incentives for miners and saying it might not be a good idea to, have unlimited apartments to rent, because then, the actual cost is going to drop, and that's not sustainable for the business model. So that's one thing that Ergo can adjust within limits.
Okay, and so we have down that there's a set amount of erg in a smart contract ready to pay out for miners. You've talked about how TX fees can help essentially either speed up a transaction, depending on how you front run it by pumping more erg into it and making it more attractive to the miners who are going to pick it up and send it along. But what boils down to TX fee increases? Essentially, what do you see as downsides to or positives for increasing TX fees at this point in time? And just to give some simple terms here, TX fees, depending on the pool, I guess, TX fees are distributed among the miners at pool. So as we were speaking before we started recording, if you have a large mining pool and you're part of has a big hash rate and there are many members in it, that TX fee, all the TX fees collected for that block will be distributed among all those. If you're in a smaller pool with less miners, you'll get more of that TX fee essentially because there's less miners to spread that TX fee over. But as you said earlier, Joe, your chances of hitting blocks are fewer essentially than the big mining pool. So in theory, it spreads out over time. So with that covered, can you tell me what your personal opinion is about what the cons and the pros are for increasing the TX fee around this time in this kind of bear market?
Okay, so let's start with the cons. Okay, I do think that there are two aspects of like logical thought that I can follow that makes sense as a con. The first might be that it's premature, meaning that if you look at block space in terms of a scarce market, I do think that as the economic value and traffic there increases, it naturally will make sense for people to adjust fees, right? And so, in one con, maybe it's too early to where we don't see the amount of traffic that really makes that economy based on scarcity make a whole lot of sense. And if I were to go down that tangent, I guess users could see it kind of as a tax because it's not market based, it's more governance based. And that's pretty valid, I think. The second is because that market economy hasn't fully developed, because we don't have the users that would create that economy. You kind of get a inorganic form of governance, which leads to like the tax type of thing, where instead of miners working together to develop that market economy around block space, you have some higher level organization that's creating a tax on users for the benefit of miners, right? And in my opinion, would I like to see that happen? Absolutely, but I've never wanted to be the person to do it because then I would be the higher organization that's taxing users for the benefit of miners rather than allowing that market to develop organically.
Can we look back at the beginning when this discussion was happening about what to set the base fee at for TX fees? What was the thought process of the devs there? If you're privy to that information, were they thinking that, okay, here's 0.001, this should be set for great, or here's what we're going to start at, and it can go wherever it wants to from there?
Sure. So the initial thinking there had a lot to do with not being in control, right? Because in a way, mining is a business, okay? And if you look at it from a business, especially going back to the inception of Ergo itself, it was for solo mining, right? And so it was this idea that we have independent operators that are going to have some stake in the network because they have their equipment and they're participating, and we want to give them tools to govern that economy without top-down control, right? And so if you actually look at the parameters that can be adjusted, they are very pinpoint specific. Like there's not one transaction fee overall. It's like, okay, the cost of an input, the cost of a data input, the cost of a transaction output, the token access cost, the computational cost. So they're really broken down into small, like independent vectors to where, as Ergo develops and as we do get a larger user base that creates more of an incentive to create a market around block space, there are very fine-tuned parameters that miners can explore and say, okay, well, if we adjusted the cost for one transaction input, what would that do based on the blocks that are coming in? Because extended UTXO is pretty unique in terms of how you have this many to one and one to many transaction type. And so a part of the thinking was, well, let's see what actually becomes popular, right? It's very hard before a network launches and before you have like implementations of smart contracts and users to predict what type of transactions are going to be popular, what type are potentially, going to be more economical in terms of creating additional fees. And that's kind of a experiment that I don't think we have fully got to. That, I would love to see miners get paid more, right? And I would love to see miners think about this more. But I don't want to be the guy that's like, okay, you have these various parameters to influence not only block space, but the actual economy of the network, and just like be the one to say, I'm in control here, we're going to do this.
And I think that's a tough thing here with Ergo, because people are coming from ETH, they're coming from Cardano, they're coming from other places where there's somebody to look to for those kind of answers and that direction. And when people come into chat and they ask questions and we respond with, oh, do you want to do it? Then do it. That's up to you, kind of thing. That's really foreign to a lot of people. So I think we got a little bit of an uphill battle here, or at least I know with the SIG groups, with what we're talking about, to try to educate people that you want to change, you're in control. You can do this. You don't need to look for somebody. You don't need to look for permission. If your idea sucks, and then it's going to hit the floor and nobody's going to vote on it, or it's not going to get very far, kind of thing. So I feel like there's a bit of an uphill battle for that, a re-education, as maybe in simpler terms. But that's the way we're looking, I think. What can you briefly explain how what EIPs are essentially, and how people go about bring those forward and from the community without any external forces or any top-down kind of motions?
Sure. So an EIP stands for an Ergo Improvement Protocol. And basically what that is it's a proposal for a type of change or a specification for building on Ergo or creating a change. Part of why a specification is important is it creates a, let's say, composability across different developers. An example, we have EIP in terms of, let's say these wallet scheme. That way we have interoperability between, key phrases across wallets. Or sometimes it has to do with safety, right? If we say, okay, this is the best way to build this particular aspect of an application because of security trade-offs A, B, C, and D, having that as an open let's say repository of information is really critical. That way someone doesn't come in and build something the wrong way. And it kind of creates both an instruction manual for let's say the engineering side that's uniform across the system, and it also has the ability to propose changes. Now, in order to create a change, ideally you do want to create an EIP. Now, the best way to start that process, in my opinion, is to start a conversation. We do have social channels for that. You could start on, let's say, Telegram. You could start on even Twitter. You can anywhere that we have Reddit, to simply try to start a larger discussion. Now, we do have this website that's somewhat buried these days called Ergo Forum. Now that was really popular when we had solo mining, right? That was a place where miners would get together and, you know, they would compare their specs and talk about setting up their rigs and how to optimize their cards and what mining software was the most performant. And that's still, you know, that's still kind of a great resource. I would say it's underused at this point because now we kind of ventured out to more common, you know, social media platforms, but that's a really great resource in terms of the mind share. So start a conversation, right? What is your idea? What would you like to do? Why does it matter? And how would, you know, what are the implications of it, both positive or negative? Because the reality is most things in life have a trade-off, right? You take a step to the left, you sacrifice taking a step to the right. Maybe there's a benefit, maybe there's not. And so those are always good discussions to have in terms of exploring, you know, how to move things forward.
And if I could interject here too, you know, one thing I've noticed with the Ergo community, sometimes you might not get any feedback talking about it, and that's okay. That
Yeah.
either means that people aren't around that are really interested in it to talk to you about it, or it means your idea might not be baked enough to actually elicit a response from somebody and move forward with that kind of thing. So in those circumstances, you know, go back to the not drawing board, but beef it up a little bit, do a little more research, maybe write a few more paragraphs exactly about what you mean to word it a little differently or a little better or a little more clearer, and then hit the chat again and continue to talk about it. I mean, I don't think you can be ignored forever. And it's just, honestly, it's about the times where you hit the chat and who's there and who's willing to talk to you and who's interested in it. So don't let, you know, if you hit the chat with that kind of stuff and you don't hear an immediate response, don't give up. You know, it doesn't mean it's a bad idea.
And one thing I would have to add is a lot of the times I get buried in channels. I'll be honest. You know, I get into Telegram, I have way too many channels. I get into Discord, I have way too many channels. I get into Twitter, and it's all kinds of madness. So in my opinion, one of the best things to do is just tag me. Right. If you want to hear from me, tag me and hopefully I'll see that pop up. But if it's something that's just dropped in one channel and there's way too many, you know, there's a high probability that I'll just miss it because it's just information overload.
And don't be discouraged either if you know, Ergo, at least with the devs I've noticed, they can be very brutally honest with their opinion on that kind of thing. If you've taken a class with Cheese in Dico, there are numerous times I've said, well, Cheese, well, you know, what if this happens and this happens? He says, that's a really terrible idea and bad programming, and nobody should ever do that kind of thing. You're like, okay, point taken.
You know what? I love that. I love that about our ecosystem is that I don't, it's so much easier when you're just stabbed in the front, then you learn real quick.
Yeah, you just gotta let the ego die down a little bit and just take it as it is for you know, constructive criticism, and then move on from there. That's hard to do for a lot of people, though, for sure.
Yeah.
So with so after that community chat kind of thing, the next steps are what? There's a GitHub for EIP's submission process.
First thing I would do is see if it gets any traction, right? Because, you know, like for me, I know the community is collectively way smarter than I am. Right. And so having, you know, iron's ability to sharpen iron will refine ideas. And that's one thing that community is really powerful at when you have interaction. So if you have an idea, talk about it, you know, create a quorum, create a discussion, create a debate, but be open to learn, right? And, you know, take alternative perspectives. And I think that once that happens, if it catches on, there will be interest, right? There's kind of a initial phase where, you know, if I were to say, okay, this is Armenio's EIP and, you know, it's somewhat controversial and I don't care what anybody thinks and I'm going to propose it, that might not go anywhere because in a way you're talking about like an aspect of governance, right? And so in terms of EIP, you know, you go through that initial bootstrapping phase. Whatever it is would need some type of implementation. You know, with an example, if it's a specific parameter around design, you know, you would need to show this is the design and this is why, and then you go kind of through a process of community review in terms of the actual implications of it and standards and you know, code behind it, right? And then once that like community feedback process or gauntlet has been cleared, then you have the ability to build it into a reference client and propose it as something that miners can run.
And you don't even, I mean, there have been numerous EIPs where it's completely text-based and theoretically based. And then after support is gathered, programmers and devs will hop on and be like, okay, this is how we implement it. This is a code. And everybody teams up from there. If you don't need to know code to have an idea or a theory about how something can better the network. So don't let that deter you.
The beauty is if you build a proper, let's say, decentralized ecosystem, you don't need to be the multi-tool. You just need to be one part. So that's something, I would love to see more miner engagement in terms of the transaction fees, as an example. And it is true, it might be early, that might not be why that has developed, but I would love to see it develop. I would love to see that community become its own independent force that really says, okay, well, we're the ones that ultimately own the block, so how can we optimize the network, not only in terms of being profitable, which right now is painful for GPU miners, but that's a whole nother spiel. It's sad to see, but I do think in time it'll consolidate. Proof of work tends to do that over time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'd say the takeaway from this is that the Ergo community is in charge of their own destiny as far as this goes, and their own movement of the project forward. We can't look for I mean, you're welcome to look for leadership and voices of leadership that have strong opinions about things, but don't look for them to stir up the coals and stir up the fire of motivation. That's on us. That's on us community members to, if we think the TX fees are too low, then let's get together and talk about it in chat, just like we did this week. And that was enough to get it on the Sigmanauts agenda meeting for next on the 8th when we meet. So just that little spark there from the community about TX fees, it's going to go into a bigger meeting where more people discuss it, which proposals may happen, which votes may happen, and then it builds from there. So all it takes is that little bit from a non-centralized group that are chatting, and it just can go from there.
Yeah, I hope one day, and it's not probably today, but I do hope one day in the future we actually have multiple entities and or individuals that are not only working on EIPs, but also proposing potential reference clients. That way, the Ergo Foundation in and of itself, that's a point of decentralization I would love to see. Right now, there's probably not the economic incentive to create that, but it's something that I think would be awesome longer term to see, like an association around the core client rather than just a single entity.
And even with that, even if there's association there, that doesn't stop other ideas outside of the association from coming forward.
Exactly. I always have individual competitive thoughts. Like if you have this war of ideas, hopefully the best one wins, right?
Exactly. Fantastic. All right. Should we jump into the actual dev update, Joe?
Sure, unless there's anything else to cover.
I think I want to stick with that because I think it's very, very important and a very big lesson for newcomers to the Ergo community about who's in charge, about how to bring things forward, and about being in control of your own investment, your own ecosystem here.
Yeah, ultimately it is a peer-to-peer network. So the ideal is to look at yourself as a peer with equal power.
And there's always something to do. You don't have to be a dev. You don't have to be, a genius at governance or that kind of thing or anything. If you have ideas, even if they're not that well formed, it's Telegram, for God's sake. We're competing good ideas with pictures of like boob memes and that kind of, Let's get serious for a second.
But way back in when Ergo first started and our socials were pretty let's say tumbleweedy. Even then we had users that would come on and we had like metal Sundays and music dropped in channels, and that type of thing is valuable.
Yeah.
So everybody can engage in some way if they want to.
Exactly. As you said, even just engaging in the chat and keeping things going and moving. The last thing, that's a really big thing that I've noticed recently. Newcomers will come in and say, wow, you guys are still chatting up a storm in this bear market kind of thing. And And we're like, oh yeah, it's just a typical Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock kind of thing. People start chatting like crazy for some reason at that time. All right, let's do this. You want to start it out with green hat?
Sure.
And the format I want to follow, Joe, if you don't mind, is go through the update first about what they did, and let's just give a brief little blurb about who the hell green hat is, or the person doing it, and maybe something else that they've worked on that we'll all know about in the front end that we use every day. Fantastic. All right, hit it.
All right, so green hat is a Sigma Rust developer. He's been with the Ergo ecosystem for a long time. A lot of the times he's quiet, but a lot of the core tooling that everybody uses, green hat has touched at one time or another. I've always found his username really funny, because you have the white hat and the black hat, and he's the green hat. In terms of Sigma Rust, he does work with other developers, sometimes puts out a lot of bounties. And that's kind of his domain, is the Sigma Rust side of things. So one of his projects that he's been working on for quite a while is this Oracle V2 update, where he's kind of taken the first Oracle framework, and it wasn't so economically efficient, right? It created a ton of dust, was part of the problem. So we went through and said, okay, how can we optimize this, make it more efficient? And he's kind of been going through this roadmap of building parts of the Oracle framework, and now we've plugged it together. And at this point, we're on testnet, right? And being on testnet, we have this ergXAU, which is gold, pool, where they're starting to pull data in terms of the price of gold, and kind of have that collected in a decentralized way, create a certain payout token. That way there's an incentive to run this type of infrastructure. And so, one of the things he's calling for here is he's encouraging everyone interested in running their own pool to start one. There's documentation in terms of the steps that are needed to, let's say, create a pool on testnet. And then he drops the roadmap. So if any user out there is interested in learning, right, even if you don't end up being an Oracle operator, you just want to play around with learning how to potentially run that on testnet, here you have documentations in terms of how to bootstrap it, how to do it. And who knows, maybe some people have some spare hours around holiday time where, they'll have time to play with it. I hope so. A lot of the time when you play around with things, you learn a little bit, right? And when we have good documentation in terms of steps, that can be super helpful. And as well, when you can get user feedback, like if there's anybody out there that wants to try to spin up the Oracle core and has problems, get in chat and ask questions. We do have a help channel. It's mostly for wallets, but I'm sure that gets monotonous. Maybe some people there would be like, hey, this is a lot more interesting than.
I forgot that Ergo had as a help channel.
I'm sure that type of questioning would be a lot more interesting than just the day-to-day customer service side, right?
In simple terms, Joe, in like 10 seconds or less, not 10 seconds, can you explain to people who have no idea what dust is and why this is bad? Okay,
so extended UTXO or UTXO in general is like cash, right? And in order to transact with cash, you have to pay a fee, right? And even in like the US, our smallest denomination of money is the penny, right? And the penny is not so economically performant, right? At this point, the government loses money producing pennies, but we still have them for some reason. Maybe it's because they would raise the price up to the nearest integer instead of down, right? So maybe it's a good thing. But in UTXO, you have the ability to have multiple places after a decimal to where you can get, a micro penny or a sub micro penny or, 0.015782 ith of a penny, right? And you can't do anything with it. It's become so small that it is basically economically inefficient to work based on the cost of transactions. And so UTXO has a tendency to spin off this, we call it dust. You could look out of it like penny dust, right? It's hard to find anything you can spend a penny on. And then when you get a bunch of penny dust, what do you do with it? It just kind of accumulates and stays in the chain state for eternity, right? Because it can't pay to transact, so it's economically useless, sadly. And so, you know, we do have other mechanisms for cleaning that up, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole to get into.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, you want to continue on with greenhat?
Sure. So in terms of his major update, looks like he successfully voted and changed the number of oracles. So that is something that's pretty important here long term as we get potentially new oracle contractors that are coming in. You know, there's this misconception that Ergo is like an oracle for something, right? Our goal is
something.
Our goal has always been simply to build the tools, right? Because if you have this framework and it's composable, you know, here we have gold, right? Well, if DEXI proves to be pretty sound and you know has an economic use case there, why not DEXI oil? Why not DEXI copper? Why not DEXI whatever price feed you want to feed into it? So having like a standard composable tool there that then the community and developers and you know applications can integrate and build into their system. You know, that's not something that the Ergo Foundation wants to do. We just say, okay, we need a way to have trusted data on our network, and this is our vector and tool for creating that.
Not to go off on a tangent, but as far as trusted data coming into the chain, how do we trust that price data for the value of gold coming in is accurate and true, or oil for that matter, that kind of thing? Like
Sure.
with normal coins, you can arbitrage the heck out of it, and that's how you know that it's correct in the price that it should be. But how do you do that with an external price coming in of value?
Okay, so the first thing we have to say is we want to build on the concept of decentralization, where we have multiple actors participating instead of just one trusted source. A lot of oracle feeds in cryptocurrency are point to point, like they are a single, you know, let's say trusted or good price feed, and you know the oracle attacks do happen. So the first thing is we need to distribute it between actors, right? Now, if we only had one data point that every actor was pulling from, we're in the exact same position where now we have a single point of failure again. So, you know, luckily with larger markets and kind of the Web 2 side, there's a ton of APIs out there that are feeding gold prices from different markets or let's say different sites that aggregate data. And so, you know, the goal was to say, okay, instead of choosing a single point of failure there, we'll pull from multiple sources and then create consensus among multiple actors. And we'll have this game mechanism where in order to be an operator, you may need to put up some collateral. And if you lie and everybody catches you lying, you're going to lose your collateral.
That's pretty nice. And that's kind of similar into how guards and watchers are going to work for Rosen Bridge a little bit, right?
It to some degree, yeah. You know, they're the, let's say, vector of failure, right? We've tried bridges with proofs where you try to automate it and then we get fraudulent proofs, and that's created a problem. If we get multiple people that are checking at multiple heights on multiple chains, you're going to get a much clearer view of what is true and what is not, right? And so the Rosen Bridge is not designed to be fast, right? In my opinion, that's attractive for like arbitrage trading, right? Where if you can see a price differential across an ecosystem and you could move fast, you know, I guess there's an incentive there. The Rosen, in my mind, is more like a distributed mechanism of clearance and settlement that we see in the traditional financial system, where you know, get money, you kind of have to clear where it came from and clear the amount, and then you give it to another party, and that other party goes through the settlement mechanism.
And also, I think the big thing that is nice about Rosen as well is that it's going to allow other people to utilize dApps and tools on the Ergo ecosystem with a stored value from another chain, which
Yeah.
is
And the other way I think is equally as valuable. You know, you may get ErgoPad trading in the Ethereum ecosystem or in the Cardano ecosystem or, you know, the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem or whatever ecosystem really. And so it does move both ways to where instead of having to deal with a central actor that then you need to go through whatever their legal process is, which, you know, may or may not make sense depending on, you know, what projects do. You know, they have a additional vector to expand into new markets.
very cool. All right, where did we leave off?
I don't know. I was just doing kind of like a short rundown of each.
All right, that's perfect. Let's go to Apextheory. Who's now? Oh, before we go on, for people who aren't familiar with dev updates, or watch that, this nice Ergo orange color means that you are a Ergo core developer. Correct? The blue color means you are a community dev. And those are essentially handed out as you announce yourself in dev chat. I made some little bots, and I put up an update in dev chat, and within a couple hours, Glass Google popped that designation on my Discord. So that was fantastic. But yeah, sorry, go for it. Apextheory.
All right, so Apextheory is a community node developer. He works a lot with Alex in terms of the let's say reference and node tooling, the P2P layer, a lot of the stuff in the core client that, you know, is kind of nitty gritty right now. One thing that they are collectively working on is this idea of bootstrapping the UTXO set. So it looks like Apextheory is working on an aspect of that to kind of help out Alex. And, you know, and so he's looking at the header requests when you're kind of chunking the UTXO set.
Can you explain real quickly bootstrapping?
Sure. So one thing that creates somewhat of an inconvenience, right, is this idea of bootstrapping a node where you have to go block by block and download the entire history of blockchain. You know, there have been rapid syncing mechanisms. I know one of them is like Ethereum Go. I'm sure there are others out there that I can't think of right now. But it basically makes that process faster, right? Sometimes you can kind of cheat that in a less trusted way where you can download an instance of an already downloaded node. There's a couple of developers that offer
risky,
that.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it can be risky if it's a trusted source. Okay, maybe it's not a bad idea if you want to get on and play with something, but you get back into the trusted environment that we're trying to get away from.
Joe, do the current nodes not do a peer-to-peer download where it may take a chunk from this chain, a chunk from this node, a chunk from that node, a chunk from this node, bring it all together and then start building it? Is that how it currently works?
Yeah, it can. It depends on how you do. You can have like a current build where I can take my existing, let's say, history and throw that on GitHub and have somebody spin it up maybe a little quicker than, you know, going through all those requests. But when we get into the Nepopal sync, which is the goal, you know, you'll be pulling from multiple sources and, you know, having a compressed representation of chain state, which should make that a lot faster. That's something that I know Alex is currently working towards, and, you know, knock on wood, we'll see that like Q1 next year.
We're digging a lot of holes here with explanations, Joe. You just dropped another term, Nepopal,
Yeah.
right? So best I've heard that explained is if anybody's into video editing or anything like that, you know that if you're making a motion tween or you're moving a motion graphic, you have a base state of that, and then maybe 30 frames later you have another state of where it's going to end up. So you have essentially keyframes of where that is. The system doesn't know anything in between there. It knows that it's going to get from here to here, point A to point B, and it knows those two locations. So we call that a keyframe. From what I understand from Nepopals is that you have set keys and you can predict where those keys are going to be in the future. So in order to look back, you can target a specific key and have a quicker sort through the chain. How madly did I butcher that, Joe?
I think it makes sense. You can kind of look at it as a type of checkpointing. I think that's the easiest way to explain it to somebody that doesn't, where, you have like milestones or mile markers.
And you can predict them. You can predict where they're going to be.
Well, you can randomly predict them. They're based on super blocks, which is a kind of weird outcome in proof of work. When you mine something way under the target, you get an extra 0 in the block header, right? So we have like these random things that pop out of proof of work, and we're like, hey, those are nice milestones. And one benefit is they're also random. Like you can predict how often they will occur over a set of time, but they randomly pop out in that time frame. So it makes a nice checkpointing. And then, yeah, you can kind of say, okay, from this checkpoint to this checkpoint, what happened? From this checkpoint to that checkpoint, what happened? And so that's a nice way to compress things, right?
That's pretty cool. Okay. Did we even get through Apextheory? How far did we get? I've lost track already.
We kind of did.
Okay, fantastic. ergFlip, this guy's been around, been in the news quite a bit, in the Ergo ecosystem.
Yeah, ergFlip is a new community developer, has been playing around with different games. Looks like he added SigUSD to the site. Next game's UI is very close to finished. I believe he dropped that today on Twitter, which is roulette.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
is this a secret thing he was working on last week that he said would take him a couple weeks?
Maybe it may just be the front end side of it.
Okay.
It's one of those things everybody loves, a little bit of fun. Please,
I do find that it's a little tough to drop an erg down on like the lottery or these games when it's such a low price. You know what I mean? It's
it's true. Yeah, please don't go to Vegas and put everything on black. And if you do, I hope it hits black, right? Manage your risk with that. Have fun.
Yeah, I think ergFlip's been around long enough where you can remove that last part, or maybe it's just for nostalgia. I don't think he's much of a noob anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, big guy right here. Here we go. Captain Nemo.
All right. So for the Nautilus side, I know that they're working on improving the DApp wallet communication protocol. And they're also playing around with a couple new toys. I've seen the DApp page, and I think in terms of the browser wallet, there will probably be a path next year where we get into the idea of like DApp interaction from the wallet, where ErgoPay does a really great job on mobile, where it kind of acts as a bridge where you don't have to copy from one and paste into something else, and it gives you a nice user experience. So I know on the browser side, there's kind of exploration in terms of how do we make that user experience better across applications.
So you're saying there's a potential he's working on allowing like small D apps to work inside the wallet to assist with that kind of stuff. So I could write, as a community dev, you could write a tiny little D app plugin essentially for Nautilus that would work inside there.
Yeah. I think probably a good way to do this, I haven't talked with Nemo about it, but would be to create some sort of standard to where you as an independent DApp developer could then build and submit that into Nautilus. And, being that you're now talking about external DApp communication through the wallet interface, it's going to change the routing of the current DApp connector a little bit. So that's being worked in progress to support that.
Great.
Next is Fleet SDK. The goal there was to take the kind of Sigma build and put it in JavaScript. That way it's something that people are a lot more familiar with, and we can get people building transactions and integrating applications into things in a much easier way. That was one of our goals for 2022. was to try to create more tools out there. And, there's some Python based ones. This is the JavaScript build, and that really accelerates development. And there's some great work being done in terms of documentation there. That's always like the unsexiest thing. That's like the biggest hero, in my opinion.
I agree. It made my hackathon project possible. MGPy's Python ergPy. I needed to know no Scala, no nothing, no even idea of how to interact with the blockchain. I just needed to be able to understand the Python code, how to inject the payments into it, and then run the code, and it's done. They did all the work for you.
Yeah. The next, he had a small update in terms of a PR that he reviewed around Ergo GraphQL. Those that don't know, that's an Explorer instance. So you have a blockchain, and an Explorer is kind of like a wrapper around the blockchain that calls and identifies different states and aspects of the chain itself, and kind of explores and calls information, essentially.
All right, dumb question time, Joe. Tell me the difference between running a node on my machine and running an Explorer instance on my machine.
Okay, so what you're doing with a node is you're downloading the entire history of Ergo, and from point, let's say block 1 to the current block height, and all of the transactions that exist in that block. What an Explorer does is it allows you to interact and assimilate that information in a way that then allows you to let's say have clarity to where you can say, okay, well, if we're going to explore where does this token come from, or how many of them exist, or how distributed are they? It's a tool to take all of that data and parse it into something meaningful
in a visual web interface that anybody can thumb through.
Yeah, I would say anybody there is probably a little generous.
Okay, that's a good point. It does take a second.
It does, but it allows you to take that data and make sense of it and create custom calls and interactions, and that's needed to take this state of the network and then build things that use that state.
And the beauty of it too is you can run both on the same machine essentially, and point your Explorer download to your Explorer instance to your own node, so you have really rapid response times from browsing your Explorer. I think so, right? Yeah. Yeah, awesome. All right, we got now tell me what this purple color means, Joe. This seems like royalty purple.
Yeah, Einonbur is royalty, definitely. He does a lot on the backside, and helps with a lot of different projects. He kind of acts as a let's say intermediary between the Ergo Foundation and the development community. He helps a lot of different builds in the ecosystem in terms of integration. He works a lot with the wallet side, somewhat similar to what Mr. Stahlfelger does with the mobile side. He tends to do on the browser side to help.
Mr. Stahlfelger is Ergo wallet, just to interject there, and other things, among other things. Awesome. Fantastic. And the purple there, I was only kidding because I like to stir hornets. The purple is an Ergo Foundation member.
So his role is kind of a bridge between the core team and the development community. That way, we get tooling. So I know he's contributed a ton with the Fleet SDK. He's contributed a ton with the GraphQL instance. Trying to create base tools that bridge like the core protocol with the teams that want to build on top of it.
And that's a perfect segue into this next community dev here, in that, I don't know how many times I've said this, but Ergo is amazing in that you'll see a project come to light, and it's not just that core dev who probably built it. Like even ergFlip. He had a lot of interactions with, was it Captain Nemo or was it Mr. Stahlfelger?
Maybe both. I don't
Maybe
know.
both. A lot of interactions with devs to help them out, help them get over hurdles, kind of things, as opposed to these little silos of dev teams that are doing this kind of thing, which is fantastic. And same thing for our next presenter here.
Yeah. HQ. I don't know how to pronounce it, if I'm totally honest here.
I think he means HQER, like HQErgo.
Ah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Ergo HQ.
Yeah.
Okay.
High quality, he means, yeah.
So it has this website ergCube, which is kind of like a social media and data aggregation site, to where if you want to learn anything about Ergo, that's a great place to go. I love these type of community websites because they make everything a lot simpler, right? So if you want to see what's new, what's happening, what media content is out there, you want to look at stats, you want to even it looks like he's got widgets for exchanges and videos, and there's a donation page. Please support this type of development.
Yeah, and sorry, go for it. Oh, okay. The cool thing about this is that we have the Ergo Foundation's page with a lot of information, a lot of listings, but that's made with very, I want to say, very clear and concise ideas to cover and be acceptable to as many people as possible. So with this kind of thing, you have somebody creating a site with their own personal preferences of how they'd like it to look and what they'd like to see, and there could be thousands and hundreds of thousands of people with that same vision of how they'd like to see things, and this is a site they go to. And 3 weeks later, somebody may develop another site very similar to this aggregation site, but with a different look and a different, subset of features that are forward and frontmost, and a group of people may like that. So you have these aggregators that there could be 50 of them going around at the same time, and each group of people will visit each one, and that's the advantage of these kind of things, I think.
Yeah, and you may have someone pull this up and say, I don't speak this particular language, I am more Romanian, and so then you get a unique instance. There's a lot of different ways the community can play around with that. I'm a huge fan of that type of engagement. The old one that has been around forever, that's one of my favorite things in Ergo, is just Ergo tutorials.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. All right, now we have a newcomer to the dev field coming up right here. You want to speak about this new guy?
Sure. So Alex is always in 50 places at once, and as he says at the end, he's always got a backlog that I don't know, maybe he's a sadist. I think he loves it. But so it looks like he's been working on the side at this UTXO snapshot, which again has to do with rapid sync. That's a nice way to think about it. The goal with rapid sync, though, is you need to do it, pulling from multiple parties in chunks, and then assimilating it without overloading your RAM. So that's something that he's been.
That's with nodes, rapid sync with nodes.
Yeah. So it's going to rapid sync UTXO snapshots of chunks of data from multiple different parties, and then assimilate it, and that creates kind of a prototype in terms of how to do a rapid sync in a useful way. Then it looks like he assigned a couple of core issues to some of the community node developers that are out there. Usually Alex does have either some bounties or some community developers that he's working with. That way he can kind of distribute his workload a little bit.
And Alex is a Ergo Foundation member, of course. So
yeah, he's the core dev. And so, we do have, even with Sigma Rust, we kind of have like greenhat, and then we have community developers that work under him. But with the Rust team, Alex tends to have people that kind of come and go depending on life and what's happening, that will contribute to the node, and we'll say, hey, I can work. What tasks do you have for me? And so we kind of do a mechanism where it kind of gets assigned, distributed, and then they'll work on it. It'll come back up and reviewed, either kicked back to them or approved. That whole fun process. Then in other matters, we're working on the DEXI contracts and kind of refining some of the parameters around that framework. Looks like that's a kind of a work in progress. There's still some things that we're refining, but overall, we know what we're doing. Then he's also working with Sigma Bond. And, one nice thing about Alex is he does tend to want to just help people build stuff. So we've kind of got a line of applications out there that are like, hey, would you be willing to, review this, look at it, see if anything pops out before I push something to market. So Terahertz is an example. Aneta, BTC, Spectrum, Sigma Finance. It's not a formal audit. It's just, can you check my work, see if anything pops up? And usually there are like specific vectors where people have a tendency to make errors or where things can show up. And so he's going to kind of go through that and just get a second set of eyes on it.
That's always good. All right, we have another EF member and Dev, MHS Sam.
Sure. So on Rosen, it's kind of a bridge framework. The point of bridges and part of why Sam has been supporting that, coming from the Ergo Foundation, is one of our core initiatives is to work with the market adoption of Ergo. And that comes with cost. Like to date, if you look at our overall budget, the highest expense item has actually been paying exchanges to support open source software. And so this idea that we can build, a bridge framework that still has, the distributed and trustless or distributed trust mechanisms that we all appreciate in this industry, without having to be beholden to some, larger party and burn huge, potential parts of our reserve, is very attractive, right? And it's a good investment in terms of the money that miners gave us and to create market adoption. So that will allow us to use ERG as kind of the core brain of the Rosen framework and connect to multiple different networks and kind of circumvent some of the central parties that were not always easy to work with. Let's just say that.
Can we lay the hammer down? Not the hammer, well, the blanket, whatever the term is, escapes me right now. Some people come in and they're like, why will this bridge not suffer from the same kind of attacks that that bridge on Ethereum just recently had, months ago, kind of thing? What's your answer to that, Joe?
Well, the first thing I have to always say is that the one greatest determination of security is time, right? And I wish that wasn't the case, to where I could say, oh, everything is absolutely 100% safe, right? But time shows the truth there. Time will show the hardness of this design. One beauty of Rosen and internal frustration is we've actually been working on bridging for over a year, aside from Rosen. First there was this thing called the gravity bridge, and we kind of did. You always have to work with a external partner on those types of bridges because you're talking about your ecosystem to their ecosystem, right? And so we kind of got everything lined up to where we were, ready to on our side, and then the other side was slow, right? They had problems, so we said, hey, this is kind of drama, and if we're gonna have a partner here, we need equal time and resources and whatnot. So let's look at this new updated SUSI bridge, and it was kind of a new iteration that was a little bit better than the original gravity bridge. So same exact thing happened, unfortunately, where Sam did all of this work to get everything ready, and it's like our side of the bridge is built, and we're sitting here waiting for our external partner to let's say implement it. Then so we said, okay, well, this is kind of crazy. Let's go to this newer type of bridge, which at that point was called Wormhole. And the same thing, we had actually already done all of the engineering and built it to specifications, and then there was a big exploit, and we kind of had to go back to the table and say, hey, this bridging stuff, number one, we've seen a lot of them blow up. We keep having this issue where we're reliant on external entities that may or may not be very reliable, and if they're not reliable in the short term in this side, how are we going to vouch for the long-term security of this bridge when the base the base engineering part is having issues? So what we did is we kind of created a thought experiment, like, okay, let's look at all of the things that blew up and let's try to isolate what were their points of failures, right? How can we minimize that? How can we minimize this external trust me on the other side of the bridge, and create a framework that then we can distribute and use the logic that we're comfortable on Ergo with and create a new type of bridge. And that led to the Rosen framework.
So in short, Joe, and I think I explained it once on one of the first shows here. In short, you're putting all the heavy lifting on the Ergo side with the Ergo devs that are maintaining this. And the only thing essentially on the other chains is in simple terms, a multi-sig threshold wallet.
Yeah, those are two different things. Multi-sig is where you basically take a key and you cut it into pieces, and you need a certain number of keys in order to turn a lock, right? Threshold is a little bit different because you basically do the same thing, but you actually have the ability to update the parameters of the threshold. So in a way, it's more flexible, to where, like, let's say that you have 10 parties on a multi-sig and you create 10 parts of a key and you need 8 of them to turn the lock, right? And one guy disappears and you say, okay, well, maybe we need to update the set to 9. You actually have to create a new wallet with a new key that's in 9 pieces. And that actually update can be kind of a pain in the ass in theory, especially if, like, the guard set moves or updates, then you have additional work you have to do to update the security of that wallet. Versus a threshold, it's more logic based, so you can update that without having to, let's say, build on a new foundation.
And the threshold can still have a requirement where multi guards need to sign for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it still will create threshold, just through a different logic rather than cutting up your key.
Okay, that's
both of them work. In my opinion, the threshold is probably better just in terms of longer term maintenance, but not every system supports that.
So going down to base simple terms again, if I'm on Cardano, I go to a website, I say that I want to take ADA and convert it to WADA on the other side on Ergo. I punch it in, I punch in the receiving address of the WADA on Ergo, I hit submit, and it does the job for me as far as that goes. My ADA goes into that threshold wallet that you discussed. The Ergo side sees this, in short, and then releases the WADA after some consensus has occurred into that address that I've specified for that kind of thing.
On a really simple level, yeah.
Yes, very, very simple. Yes. Trying to keep it super simple. Thank you for being kind. Fantastic.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
All right. Oh, let's see. We've got.
What were you up to?
I felt it was Christmas. I need to at least say something, right? I'll take this one, Joe. We created a voting app for the Sigma Knots program, and part of it is that it's always hard to get people motivated to vote. You got to constantly remind them, kind of thing. It's a process. You really gotta be involved with that kind of thing. So I made a web interface with 2 bot hooks from Discord and Telegram that people can put votes up. The bot reminds them, and they can also vote from the bot and list votes. And so there were a bunch of bugs, of course, because when you develop by yourself and you review the code by yourself, you always find those kind of things. So squashed a couple bugs, added a few tokens to the price bots that I have, and made this little JSON feed for anybody who wants to use it. So if people look at, like, if you go to MinSwap or you go to Spectrum and you get their API, it lists everything all at once. So you're going to have to customize your code to pull specific links from that. This guy, all you have to do is put the token that you want at the end of it. And you can see in the little preview here, can I bring this up? Will it show it? Yeah, there we go. That it just pops out, and let me move this over. Right here. There we go. Just pops out a JSON right of the one that you want. That's it. Super simple there. Anybody's welcome to use it or not. It doesn't matter. It'll be there whether you use it or not. Don't care. Okay, here we go. All right. Go for it, Joe. Who's this guy?
This guy is the Mr. Comet, we can call him. Those of you that don't know, Comet is a meme coin on the Ergo ecosystem. Now, one unique thing about Comet is they actually do stuff, right? A lot of meme coins kind of just like spin up and don't actually do much. One thing that they did was they built a lottery, and we'll see how the lottery goes. The first lottery, the Comet Core Dev won the lottery. So we have to ask, okay.
It's working as intended, Joe.
As intended. Now it looks like the second lottery, nobody won. So now the prize pool grows a little bit. Looks like they've added some stats and about the pool, and they did sell some NFTs to kind of fund this little venture of theirs. And so part of this lottery will pay out to NFT holders, and part of it will burn. And like the specific numbers of that, I actually don't know, but
we're not talking about joke money here. 22 point. Here, let me get my calculator up. Hang on one sec. It's in one of these channels. Here we go. Watch this. Comet 25, 250 million, was it, or 25?
It's 25.5, I think.
So 25, 500, 000. Let's see. That's 324 US or SIG USD that they're doing here. That's no small thing.
Yeah, let's see who wins. That's going to be the interesting thing, right? You can't win twice in a row after not winning. Then
that'd look really bad, but that'd be perfect.
Yeah, no, I mean, from what I to be honest, I haven't dove into their contracts that much, but
you got to have a lot of Comet in your Tipper wallet somehow. You should be able to play soon, no?
I think I have about 3,000.
That's it.
Comet hasn't shown me much love on the social. Okay.
Oh boy. All right, let's LowKeyNerd, Blitz TCG.
All right, so those of you that don't know Blitz, his name is Mick. He's working on a card game. I've always been a pretty big fan of how he handles his business with the card game, because while his passion is probably more the game itself than kind of the economic side, but it does make a lot of sense, in my opinion, that, you know, if he makes a game that he loves and that's what he's into, then other people will see that and appreciate it. And you know, that was a much greater path to success than just trying to extract value initially. I actually spent time with him in Vegas. He had his whole booth, and you know, he's done a great job in development, in my opinion.
He had a video come out recently. I think he just posted a video with some actual live gameplay recently that's really good. And the thing that I love about this is that, you know, whenever somebody harks on me about NFTs, like you, Joe, or anything like that, when my friends hark on me about NFTs, I'm not a huge collector, but I do have a few, or anything like this, I say, look, I said, did you not collect baseball cards as a kid or anything like that? And I was like, it's the same thing. It's the same kind of ownership of having something that is yours. It's tangible, even though it's digital. It's still mine. It's tangible. I can move it from places. I can trade it with something. It's a whole same concept. It's just foreign to some of those people. So with Blitz TCG, the thing that I love about this is, just like physical playing cards, if Blitz TCG goes down, I still have that in the blockchain. I still have my ownership of what I've done, what I've purchased, any cards that I have, or that kind of thing. It's still mine. I still have it. Unlike these other games where, you know, if the central servers go down and they close shop, you know, screw you. There goes all your money.
Yeah. No, you know, one of my favorite things about Blitz was when they first started development. You know, one of the first things that Mick did is he hired somebody to make custom music for the game. And then, you know, that doesn't really happen in a lot of blockchain games where that's the focus. Like, we need the right music to set the theme for the game, right? That just tells you a certain meticulous thought. and passion, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what that comes out with. There's a Discord channel. They're still in the process of doing, gameplay and testing, and people that are on their Ergo ecosystem to have time over Christmas. And if you want, that's certainly something you can do that could contribute and help a developer on the network.
Very neat. All right, let's see any other ones here. I think there's a bit of chatter once in a while.
Is there? So those of you that don't know ScalaHub, he is basically like I'm going to call him the skunk works master of Ergo, where, a lot of the time he is kind of working independently in his own little lab somewhere, coming up with the next crazy idea in terms of the framework, how best to build it, how best to implement it. If you go back to a lot of the initial papers that kind of formed this idea of Ergo in the network itself, you'll always see Amitabh, which is ScalaHub, his moniker. So he's been with Ergo from the inception and is kind of the chief mad scientist, let's call him.
That's awesome. And I mention this every time I show this on screen. For newcomers, this does not mean a bot's talking to you. This is the bridge between Telegram and Discord. So this allows you to chat with the development channel in Discord from the Telegram channel of development kind of thing. It's really cool. It even this bridge can even listen to other bots, which is a nice little trick too. So you can run commands in the Telegram side to actually invoke bot commands that are living in Discord, which is really cool. So
yeah. As long as I don't delete them, right? I've nuked a couple of bridges.
Okay, let's see. We have Luivatra next.
Luivatra is one of the developers with ErgoPad and Idea. Looks like he is taking time for Christmas to be with his family. So that's
Luivatra
great.
also made the Tipper bot, right?
Did make the Tipper bot. So those of you that don't know, we do have a Tipper bot that you can use it on Twitter and Discord and Telegram and
Reddit.
Yeah,
that was something that somebody mentioned in a Cardano NFT meeting spaces the other day, and people were like, wait, what is this thing? This is amazing. And the implications of this are really cool in that when you're trying to, let's say you're running a competition on Twitter, all right, and everybody votes on something, you maybe have 10 winners, okay? Now, instead of having to ping these winners and say, hey, give me your wallet address so I can send something to you, all you do is tell Tipperbot, send them 2 erg, send them 10 erg. Tipperbot sends them a message that says, hey, you've been made a wallet. Here's your secret phrase. Go get it, kind of thing. So even in that circumstance, it's invaluable with those kind of things.
If I'm honest, I was a little worried when the Tipperbot came out on Twitter, because I'm thinking, what is going to like, we have the ability for people to potentially create custom tokens with any name or sometimes even emojis on them. And then we have the ability for them to potentially spam them to anybody on Twitter. Like, I guess with great power comes great responsibilities, right?
Joe, there's always time for that to happen.
Hopefully I'm not giving people ideas right now. But at first I was like, I'm not sure if this is going to be the greatest idea. I could see like the use case of it, but the dark side of it is
it's really become a staple of the community and the chats and that kind of thing. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So I actually do think there have been some random attempts initially to tip Michael Saylor or tip whoever. Not whether they did anything with it, who knows.
We'll get that erg back in storage rent.
Probably.
All right, we have Spectrum right here.
All right. So Ilya is the core developer of Spectrum. He started with Ergo a long time ago. Initially, he was the core Explorer developer. And then when we rolled out to the point where we were ready to potentially support applications and stuff, he said, hey, I want to go out and create this Ergo Dex stuff, and also he's creating an application on the Cardano side, and he's also working on a unified layer 2 like secondary network that's called Spectrum, that has got some pretty interesting use cases in terms of the DEX. So looks
that'll,
like
that'll let you do token. I mean, the ideal in the very future is that that'll let you do token per token swap, right, with that side chain.
Yeah, ideally. Well, one of the things that Ilya helped out a tremendous amount with is kind of backstory, is exchange integrations, right? Whenever we would work with integrating with an exchange, Ilya was usually the guy that would come in and kind of take the exchange engineers through the processes. Ergo, this is how it works. Then usually he'd have to work to some degree with the issues that came up with integrating it into their system. So he has always had kind of a unique position in terms of the exchange side of, let's say, crypto, beyond just like the smart contract side. And his specialty in terms of his role was he was the core Explorer developer initially. And again, that's the wrapper that's calling the chain. So it's a lot of unique tools that I think he's going to use well in what he's building.
So as I mean, that just triggered a thought in my head. As Spectrum is putting in a raffle for a redesign of the Explorer, that makes some sense that somebody that was a core dev of Explorer knows it enough to be able to bring that proposal forward and make some serious changes to it to be helpful.
Oh yeah, I think he's very well suited for that. It's kind of funny. He's the guy that was teaching the central exchange engineers how to with Ergo. Now here he's building his own competitive product. So Spectrum Finance, it looks like the swaps math review for stable swaps exchange is a work in progress. He's working with some other automated DEX contracts as well. Working with the off-chain bot side of things in terms of bundling and tracking and pipelining of transactions. Looks like he's also created his own JavaScript SDK, which is a work in progress. So he's created his own toolkit to work with Ergo DEX. Legal side is always fun to deal with. It's something that if there's developers or projects in the community that ever need point of contact or forwarding, I always do that for free. When they need to connect with different legal firms. So I know that around their initial distribution, they want to make sure that they don't get themselves in trouble or anybody else in trouble. And state of the market, I guess, is the SEC says we're gonna start basically enforcing things, and nobody knows what that looks like because there's no forward clarity. So sadly, even most lawyers that you pay are going to be like, well, you're running through a foggy forest, and this is where we don't think the trees are, but there might be
better to play it safe in these circumstances.
Yeah, the reality is it's too foggy. You can't really pay for anything that's concrete because there's no concrete parameters set. So sad, but true. Then looks like at the front end, they're still adding some initial support. Ergo Pay is always huge. And liquidity mining is on its way. So there's gonna be a lot of fun stuff there.
And eventually not just a lot of the stuff will cross over to what's able to the Cardano chain. And
then we'll see what's even more interesting when we get this layer 2 that he's working on, the Spectrum network itself, which looks like it's going to have some sort of don't quote me on this because I haven't like fully dove into it, but I think it's going to be somewhat of a proof of stake oriented in terms of its consensus. And so SPF may have a use case as a token there in terms of securing that layer 2.
Very cool. Oh, we've got our buddy Cheese.
All right. So Cheese is doing his magic with Sigma Finance. Basically, he's creating open contracts that are taking peer-to-peer financial tools and saying, hey, why don't we create some core repository of interesting ideas, whether it's bonds or credit unions or a lot of other stuff. And it started a larger conversation. I read through his repo. The thing that always sticks out to me is when people say, hey, this is free, please look and play and give your ideas and learn, right? I'm always a huge fan of that. So quite excited to see Sigma bonds roll out.
Yeah. Let's see. We've got Morphic, who's also an EF member.
Yep. So what Morphic does is he works primarily with the Sigma state interpreter, the app kit, kind of a lot of the upstream tools that everybody uses, right?
So in short, AppKit in short is essentially what these what you just saw, Fleet SEK and ergPi, those are what that interacts with on their level so that it can interact with the blockchain.
Yeah, so a lot of the let's say everybody pretty much touches stuff that Morphic plays with. So he's playing with the Sigma state interpreter. We did this massive upgrade to 5.0. And so, he's been kind of working on that in the core side for over a year. He says here he cleaned out 14,000 lines of code and has been going through massive refactoring and cleanup and support. And now he's working with kind of following these changes downstream to where, that interacts with Fleet and Sigma JS and a lot of the tools that everybody works with. And so Morphic tends to be kind of all over the place, to be honest, because he works all the way from the back to the front. And he does a lot of work with developers just in terms of like implementing the tools.
We've got Chris Ray from Excel.
All right, so Chris Ray is a member of the Excel team. What they're doing is working with P2P finance in an uncollateralized way, which I guess you could look at as a form of charitable lending, but potentially with profit. Looks like the private testing has been going on. I actually, can you hear my dog?
I can.
Oops.
No, it's all right. We'll leave it in.
Yeah.
So Excel, the unique thing about Excel is that it's I think they're aiming to be as headless as possible, from what I understand from Chris, right? They're essentially just acting as connecting one to another via their portal, essentially.
Yeah, I think the most unique thing about Excel is Chris Ray, if I'm totally honest, just in terms of his mentality, his mindset, and what he wants to create. Probably unpopular to say, but like for his birthday this year, one of the things he did was he forgave a loan, right? And he's like, that's what I want to do. And so, it's not always you can have a lot of things in this industry, but one thing that you can never really escape is intent. And people can say whatever they want about Chris, but I really believe his heart is in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, he just when I first came onto SIGs, one of the first few announcements was Chris said, "Hey, I'd like to help kickstart the treasury and donate some money to the SIGs treasury," which is fantastic. We're still working on getting that treasury there for Chris to actually donate to, but we're getting there, Chris. Don't worry. And that's the motivation once we get it established that can happen. Cyberverse, Mr.Pixel.
All right, so Mr.Pixel is working with Cyberverse game. There's a ton of community engagement potential with NFTs and games, and it builds their own little like sub-society community. It looks like Cyberverse has got their city map. It looks like they've connected their wallet, their marketplace, many maps coming together, and looks like there's going to be an alpha release here soon. And looks like they've also got some UI balance updates for the gameplay. So that's great to see. Whenever you get that type of alpha or beta release, everybody that has the time, please hop in there, have fun, break things.
Yeah, it's not even a big commitment, just don't feel like you have to be in there for 5 hours beating against something. Log in, check it out, pop around, and maybe do it again a little bit later, and even that kind of thing helps.
Yeah, I always like to use the analogy of like a kid in a video game. The best thing you can do in that type of testing is just have people do the unexpected, to where like they run into some random wall somewhere and jump and fall through the map, right? And from like the development side, why would anyone do that? Well, because a lot of the times users are kind of like water. There's a crack there, they'll find it, and
oh, that's for sure. It's so hard to program against that. Oof.
So having people beat things and play around is really huge.
It looks like a shout out. He's going to do a audio NFT airdrop event, so stay tuned for that.
Oh, that's
Christmas
great.
audio NFT.
That's great to hear.
We've got Blobstopia, haileypdll.
All right. So Blobstopia is a game where you take a blob and you have the ability to feed them oatmeal and you fight other blobs for money, right? It's like a secret fight club application. Looks like there's
New project they're working on.
a new project that's coming out. Looks like options on tokens for the Oracle price. So looks like a call option for the ability to. No, that's an interesting market, actually. It's like a data prediction betting market. Curious to see where that goes.
Maybe we can do it with Comet and lose even more money.
Yeah.
All right, we've got wmcclinton.
All right, so that's Willie from Aneta BTC. They're working on a bridging mechanism with Bitcoin and with Cardano. Looks like their V1 protocol. They're still smashing some bugs and working through the swap and redeem function. Looks like they're updating their UI dashboard with current transactions, vault amounts, and they're going to start a private test net and collecting feedback soon. So same thing, if you guys are interested in playing around, see if once they do private, they may do public test net, and it's always a good time to hop on and break things.
Yeah, and I think they just announced on their channel one or two. Frosty did a day or two ago that was released to, or they're working on releasing it imminently to a handful of people in the back end to do that. Yeah. Willie McClinton, you don't see him much around. I think he's doesn't like to be on social as much, but he definitely does continue to chug along on that kind of thing. You'll see a lot of devs that are like that, where you don't mainly see him on socials, but if you reach out to him, perhaps they'll answer you if you need help. But it's not everybody's scene, honestly.
All right, it looks like we got a new face or username already, Blue, so he's already a community dev around here.
Glasgow's really fast at that.
He's really fast. So his name is Dark Dragon. It looks like he's new. Like to get involved as an Ergo developer. Interests are compilers and blockchain. So he made a first contribution attempt in Scorex with the interpreter. Looks like he reached out to Morphic for some assistance. And yeah, it looks like we might have a new bug hunter. That's always a great way to potentially come in and learn not only about Ergo, but also have some economic incentive there. We'll often put bounties out for tasks for community developers, and they'll hunt them down as they have time, and the network gets better.
And this is a perfect example of somebody who just comes in, does something, and then starts asking questions.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about the Ergo network, that you can come in as a newcomer, do something, and tag a core dev, and Morphic will get back to him.
And look at Kushti. Alex even answered, immediately.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Noah as well.
All right. So those of you that don't know, we have this great website called Sigmaverse. Sigmaverse, it kind of is the aggregator, the original one. Now that we have multiple aggregators, so we're decentralizing Sigmaverse, which is great to see. So it looks like he's saying, hey, cool new dev, then offers, hey, you want to plug into the ecosystem. It's great to get people's contact information. And, hopefully if he wants to come in and build on Ergo, we can keep him busy, right? Maybe Dragon's a female. I don't know. Guess what? That's hard to say. But I just hope that works out for him.
As long as they don't pronounce that they're female in baseless or something like that.
Yeah. I've gotten in trouble for that a couple times in the updates because how do you know?
Yeah. All right, we have Anon Real, who's also a ecosystem core.
Sure. So Anon Real is one of the oldest application developers in the Ergo ecosystem. If you go back to the Zero Knowledge Treasury, the auction house, this is kind of our first application developer that really started building complex logic, outside of like the core team. We have this proxy contract as an example that, many people will learn about that came from Anon Real. Looks like he's been working with the auction house and implemented a new scanner, which will make that a bit more performant. Looks like he also updated the contracts to potentially accept multiple token types. So that kind of builds out use cases for other tokens if they want to, expand what you can do with them. Looks like he's also added like and total likes on artwork pages, working on an activity pages for the latest sales, mints, listings, and other activities. And so, yeah, it's kind of getting a facelift.
Can you briefly talk about, because sometimes I get confused about this kind of stuff. Sure. Is Auction House an EF funded venture, or is this just Anon Real helping out?
It was kind of Anon Real helping out initially. It was quite funny. It was 2020. I think it was late 2020 where the auction house initially came out, and NFTs didn't really go through their popularity yet. Right. So we're like, hey, we can do this. Let's build it. And a lot of users in the ecosystem were like, wow, this is kind of neat. But, it's hard to predict where things go sometimes. Right. One unique thing about the auction house is it was fully open source end to end. Anybody anywhere could post anything to it, which was a great thing and a not so great thing.
That's for sure.
And
we know that's a bad idea.
that there was no guardrails, there was no now they have at least mechanisms of governance, and they're updating, and it was a really interesting experiment. I think for a while I had like a statue head thing as my profile picture a lot of places, and I bought that on the Ergo auction house way back when for like 50 cents. And I was super excited. That was my first.
Is that your only NFT, Joe?
No, I have a couple more. Sadly, I don't always stay up to date on that side of things, and when I do, if it's like limited drops and that, I'm usually like the last guy or show up. Sadly, I try.
All right, we have soysor.
All right, so it looks like soysor is opened the EIP for standardizing stealth addresses. I know that's an ongoing discussion. The same thing, we're going to try to create a kind of a open framework that everybody can then follow and implement, and you get standardization and better security assumptions through that.
So can we talk about the difference between stealth addresses real quickly and like the privacy mode in Nautilus?
Sure. So the privacy mode in Nautilus has to do with not reusing the same UTXOs.
Still traceable easily back to a main wallet, essentially.
It's still traceable, but it does create I don't know. It's hard to tell. Was it the same wallet or did you transfer it to somebody? Right. Usually it's the same wallet. Let's be honest. Stealth pools have to do with hiding in public. as the best way to explain that in a simple way, where you're using a liquidity pool to kind of jointly, let's say similar to what you see on the decks, where you kind of everybody adds to a community pot and they have the ability to pull out their funds, and you kind of all hide by commingling. That makes sense.
Like fish in a school almost.
Yep.
Gotcha. So it's how similar is that to like the mixer technology or the mixer code?
The mixer's a bit different because there you're actually creating rings. Now if you do plug these two things together, the stealth addresses and mixing, we can build some interesting privacy technology. Basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to break the link between the user, even if it is some address, and the funds. They're trying to break that linkability to where if somebody's looking at the blockchain from like a high level or a visual tool, they cannot tell, they cannot link the two. Let's just say that, other than some mathematical probability, and you can build that out to where you can assume it's very, 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 very improbable that someone's going to make that connection.
Gotcha. All right, let's see. Do we have anybody else in here? I think that might be it, Joe.
Might be it.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. I think that's it. That's Joe. I think we've been talking for an hour and a half.
Yeah, the dev updates get a bit longer.
But I think it's good. I think it's great that you've taken the time to explain what people are and a little bit of their history, as well as try to simplify as much stuff as possible for this show. Hopefully people stick around for most of it as far as that goes. One more thing, well, maybe not one more thing. You had mentioned, I don't know if I saw it on a tweet, it may have been a tweet. You were talking about use case between some sort of anonymous blockchain and normal blockchain as a yeah, it's a pathway that Ergo could take. Do you mind talking about that briefly?
Sure. So DeFi is moving more towards the TradeFi side of things, and what that has to do with basically compliance. In my opinion, that needs to happen on an application level. The core element of blockchain should be neutral and permissionless always, right? And so you can look an example at Ethereum is doing something that's somewhat unpopular, but not talked about enough in terms of having OFAC compliant blocks, right? In my opinion, that's the absolute wrong way to run a blockchain, because, well, you can create all kinds of disadvantages to users based on their jurisdiction. It makes a ton of sense. If somebody wants to build down on Ergo, is it possible? Yes, do it on the application level. Censor it and, do that and regulate that through your front end on the application level. Don't try to push it to the core, because that's a terrible idea and you just burned everybody else in the world, right? Now, DarkFi has to do with people that, may exist in hostile environments. Those exist in the world where, it may be illegal to have cryptocurrency, or it may be, heavily regulated to where, it may not be practical for the average user to do. And so, part of our initial goal, I would hope, as cryptocurrency enthusiasts, is how do we create global unstoppable networks that empower everyone equally, right? And so there may be a need for privacy technologies and ways for actors that are in hostile jurisdictions to transact and use these as mechanisms to connect to larger economies, basically.
And you're saying that these can be done on the application level for both sides, essentially?
Yeah, they can be done for both sides. The risk I see, and I kind of watch the group consciousness of people in crypto moving more towards the TradeFi sides without recognizing the trade-offs. And in my opinion, if someone wants to do that on the application level, that's great. That can be built. It's not an engineering problem, but to take that philosophy and try to force it on the base layer of a protocol in my opinion, is insane and totally against the basic principles of these systems. So hopefully, as regulatory pressure potentially builds, people can see the wisdom of that in people that act outside of their jurisdiction, and we can deliver tools to people in places that need it the most, because usually it's oppressive regimes and economies that are very limited are actually the users that would benefit the most from these type of systems that we're trying to build. So in my mind, it's always been build for them, like build for the worst ergo, not in the worst condition with the worst hardware. And if we can connect that user and give them a safe and decent user experience, everybody else, is fine.
Awesome. That sounds great. That's a good way to end it, Joe. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you letting us blend the dev update with the Sigma update. A one-stop shop for everybody this week instead of watching multiple shows.
I've got one more thing to add.
Oh, okay, go for it.
He didn't get it in here, but today, I believe, was the first year anniversary of Satergo full node wallet, and so
he didn't.
Gotta give them a shout out. Satergo's been kind of creating this unique package that runs in multiple environments. It's a pleasure to work with, especially in comparison with, let's say trying to get the average user to sync a jar and work with the original node. So that's been huge for the ecosystem. So I got to tip my hat to Satergo and say, happy anniversary, buddy.
Isn't he coming on a new release soon too? Was that a message there?
Yeah, I think that was today, which is the 23rd. So
that's amazing. And for those of you that don't know, it's as Joe said, the current node syncing, you have to do a little command line, run a Java file potentially. Satergo makes it easy with a Windows executable, a Mac executable, or a Linux run file that you just start up the app. It's got a beautiful interface made by one of the community members as well. And it'll sync a full node for you and act as a wallet for you, a desktop wallet for you. So it's a really cool package all bundled together, and it's made by Aberg, and there's an actual Satergo channel that you can pop in Telegram and chat with the guy. He loves company. He welcomes everybody that joins the channel. I don't think I've seen him miss anybody.
He's always been easy to work with. I always enjoy that.
For sure. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a fantastic holiday, and hope some of you get a little break and vacation, get some sleep in, and don't worry about crypto for a couple days.
That's right. Family and food.
Ciao, everybody.